The Second Battle of Passchendaele was the culminating attack during the Third Battle of Ypres of the First World War. The battle took place in the Ypres Salient area of the Western Front, in and around the Belgian town of Passchendaele, between the 26th of October and the 10th of November 1917. The Canadian Corps relieved the exhausted Second Anzac Corps, continuing the advance started with the First Battle of Passchendaele and ultimately capturing Passchendaele village. Beyond gaining favourable observation positions, the battle was intended to gain drier winter positions on higher ground. The assault position was directly south of the inter-army boundary between the British 5th and 2nd Armies. As a result, the Canadian Corps was to attack with supportive formations from the British 5th Army to the north and the 1st Anzac Corps and 10th Corps to the south. The offensive was executed in a series of attacks, each with limited objectives, delivered at intervals of 3 or more days. The execution dates of the phases were tentatively given as the 26th of October, 30 October and the 6th of November, with a final smaller action on the 10th of November, to permit time to facilitate interdivisional relief. There was a planned 7-day pause between the second and third stages, during which time the Second Army was ordered to take over the section of the Fifth Army front adjoining the Canadian Corps, so that the central portion of the assault could proceed under a single command. The attack was successful in capturing the German-held high ground along the Passchendaele-Westrosa-Beek ridge, but the campaign was forced to end just short of Westrosa-Beek. No further attempt was made to build on the momentum of the attack. The significant victory of the Austro-German forces against the Italian army at the Battle of Caporetto and the forthcoming Battle of Cambrai forced the British into a parallel diversion of resources away from the sector and make an end to offensive actions in the Ypres Salient. Background: in July 1917, British Field Marshal Douglas Haig launched a series of offensives, the Third Battle of Ypres. This was an attempt to break down the resistance of the German Fourth Army and advance out of the Ypres salient. Initial successes had been achieved at the Battle of Messines and subsequent Battle of Pilkem Ridge. Torrential rain in August interrupted the tempo of the British advance and led to little progress at the Battle of Longmark. In view of the failure of the British Fifth Army to make much headway in August, Haig decided to transfer more offensive weight towards the southeast, along the southern half of Passchendaele Ridge. The main command was therefore switched from General Hubert Gough's Fifth Army to the British Second Army under command of General Herbert Plumer. Plumer planned a series of more limited attacks, taking advantage of recent experience, rather than Gough's attempts at a more optimistic semi-open warfare version. Less ambitious infantry advances at the Battle of Menin Road, Battle of Polygon Wood, Battle of Broadside and Battle of Gravenstafel Ridge produced a 4,000-yard advance in 2 weeks. The German attempts at resisting the advances led to heavy losses on the part, especially at Broadside, after which the German command began preparations for a general withdrawal. In the low ground west of the Passchendaele Ridge, 3 months of constant shelling had blocked the watercourses that normally provided drainage. When rain began falling on the night of the 4th of October, which continued intermittently for the next 3 days, the battlefield was once again transformed into a quagmire of mud, making movement extremely difficult. Gough and Plumer apparently told Haig that they favored ending the campaign on account of the change in the weather and general state of the battlefield. However, the decision was made to continue the offensive to gain more favorable winter positions on higher ground. The Battle of Po El Capel and First Battle of Passchendaele both resulted in many casualties for both sides and failed to achieve any appreciable advance opposite Passchendaele, although they did provide a slightly better starting line for another attack. The 4 divisions of the Canadian Corps were transferred from the Lens sector to the Ypres Salient to capture Passchendaele. The Canadian Corps relieved the Second Anzac Corps on the 18th of October from its position along the valley between Gravenstafel Ridge and the heights at Passchendaele and immediately began planning for the offensive. Interestingly, it was virtually the same front as had been occupied by the 1st Canadian Division back in April 1915. Prelude. Planning and preparations. The Canadian Corps operation was to be executed in a series of 3 attacks, each with limited objectives, delivered at intervals of 3 or more days. As the Canadian Corps position was directly south of the inter-army boundary between British 5th and 2nd Army, the British 5th Army would mount subsidiary operations on the left flank of the Canadian Corps, while the 1st Anzac Corps would advance to protect the right flank and 10th Corps attacked Gelliveld to improve the local tactical position and act as a diversion for the main attack in the north. Canadian Corps Commander Lieutenant General Arthur Currie submitted his provisional operational plan on the 16th of October and recommended the attack not be executed until the 29th of October, to move sufficient artillery forward. However, Haig was anxious to avoid any unnecessary delays, particularly given that he wished to assist the French attack on Malmaison, which was due to start on the 23rd of October. Currie and the British Second Army commander, Herbert Plumer, re-examined the situation and finally set the attack for the 26th of October. The dates from the subsequent phases were tentatively given as the 30th of October and the 6th of November. Extensive preparations were needed before any advance could be made. A number of problems were found with the artillery and positions transferred from the Australians. Of the 250 heavy howitzers that existed on paper, only 227 could be found, and of these 89 were out of action. Of the 306 18-pounder field guns, less than half were in action. The problem of mobility caused by the mud also resulted in the Australian artillery being badly bunched in 2 main clusters, thereby furnishing the Germans with easy targets. Furthermore, the Australians had been unable to send damaged artillery pieces for repair, because the Provost Marshal had ordered that no guns use the roads, for fear of blocking traffic. The situation was considerably improved by the arrival of the Canadian Divisional Artillery, which placed an additional 210 18-pounder field guns, 190 howitzers and 26 heavy guns at the disposal of the Canadian Corps. As early as the 17th of October, assaulting units were given details about the German defences in the respective sectors, to facilitate early assault planning. Intelligence officers and artillery observers worked jointly in observation posts, recording newly built German fortifications as well as those that had escaped notice, permitting the artillery to bombard them before the offensive. To improve the transport of artillery and supplies, an extensive program of road building was started. 10 field companies, 7 Royal Engineer tunnelling companies, 4 Army troop companies and 9 battalions were put to work repairing or extending plank roads. For the middle of October until the end of the offensive, a total of 2 miles of double plank road and more than 4,000 yards of heavy tram line were laid in the Canadian Corps area. Brigadier General Edward Morrison, commander of the artillery, also secured permission to use the roads to the rear for getting disabled guns back for repair. Moving troops to the front ahead of the attack was nonetheless extremely difficult, as the only means of approaching the front line were narrow boardwalks made of wood planking, which wound between the shell holes. Slipping off the duckboards could often be deadly, with unfortunate soldiers frequently drowning in mud under the weight of their own equipment. On account of the exhausting nature of the trip, the leading assault units entered the support line 4 days before the battle, to ensure soldiers would be as fresh as possible for the attack. Preliminary operations on the 14th of October, a German attack captured a post on the 9th Corps front of the British 37th Division. The next day, patrols from the British 9th Division found that the Germans had occupied Varlet Farm. On the 20th of October, a local assault was conducted by elements of 3 British divisions and 1 French division. The British 18th and 34th Divisions attacked Pau El Capel, while the British 35th and French 1st Division assaulted the Houthulst Forest. The attack began at 5:25 a.m. After a 48-hour bombardment, 2 battalions of the British 18th Division reached a German headquarters west of Pau El Capel Church. 2 brigades of the 34th Division attacked at 5:35 a.m. The right brigade taking their objectives and Riquet Farm in the 18th Division area. The left brigade of the 34th Division advanced until close to a row of pillboxes, thought to have been captured. This proved incorrect, and the attacking troops consequently suffered casualties. British reinforcements were stopped at the Broembic Creek due to flooding and a heavy German barrage. The 35th Division attacked with 2 brigades. The right brigade reached the first objective easily. The left flank of the brigade reached its final objective at 6:45 a.m., whereas any further advance on the right flank was stopped by German machine gun fire. The left brigade captured Maréchal Farm on its right flank, but the attack in the center was stopped by German machine gun fire. The left flank of the brigade reached the final objective by 7:45 a.m. A German counterattack forced 1 battalion to retreat to the start line. The counterattack was then caught by British artillery fire and contained. During the operation, the British suffered 479 casualties and took 125 prisoners. On the 21st of October, wire cutting began on the 5th and 2nd Army fronts. Under cover of the bombardment, 18th Division platoons moved forward on the night of the 21st of October and dug shallow trenches, which saved many casualties from a German counter-bombardment. After a ruined farm behind the jumping-off places caught fire and silhouetted the troops. On the 22nd of October, in the British 9th Division sector to the south, the 18th Corps Cyclist Battalion conducted a feint, using dummy figures to assist an attack by the 9th Division. The attack was resumed at 7:30 a.m. through the village, taking Noble's Farm, Munier House and then Tracker's Farm, a total advance of 1,000 yards. At 5:00 p.m., a German counterattack was stopped before Noble's Farm with heavy casualties.